I started producing music in 2012, and at that time, if you wanted a pair of studio monitors for your home studio, there were two popular budget-friendly options. You either got a pair of KRKs or a pair of Yamahas. That's what most bedroom producers were working with at the time. It's been almost 10 years since then, and there are tons of new studio monitors on the market. New technology has been developed, and in general, this is great news. Although all these options make deciding which studio monitors to buy much more challenging. A good studio monitor will provide minimal distortion, great stereo imaging, a wide frequency response, neutral sound coloration, and a high volume level even with a small cabinet. So what does all of this mean? Well, that's what we're going to break down. I'm going to teach you how studio monitors work, how to choose studio monitors that are the right size, how to identify if you need a subwoofer, which additional features to look for in a pair of studio monitors, and the importance of acoustic treatment. Kali Audio recently gifted me a pair of their brand new Project Independence IN5 studio monitors to demo, review, and play around with, so I'll be using them to demonstrate some really fundamental studio monitor concepts. On a basic level, you probably understand that when you send an audio signal to a pair of speakers, they generate sound waves that you hear with your ears. The concept is simple enough, but there's actually a lot going on under the hood. The round components on the front of a studio monitor that vibrate are called drivers. They're electroacoustic transducers, which means that they convert electrical audio signals into sound. Most drivers only produce a portion of the audible frequency range, so multiple drivers are installed within the cabinet of a speaker to deliver a broader frequency response. Drivers are powered by audio amplifiers. An amplifier increases a low-power electronic audio signal to a level that is high enough to drive loudspeakers and headphones. Studio monitors are typically either biamped or triamped, which is the practice of using 2 or 3 audio amplifiers to amplify different frequency ranges. The incoming signal is split using a component called a crossover. The split signals are then each sent to their own respective driver. Studio monitors with 2 drivers are called two-way monitors, and studio monitors with 3 drivers are called three-way monitors. A two-way monitor may contain a woofer, which is a low-range driver, and a tweeter, which is a high-range driver. A three-way monitor often includes a woofer, mid-range driver, and tweeter. These IN5s are three-way monitors that contain a 5-inch woofer, 4-inch mid-range driver, and 1-inch tweeter. You tend to get more clarity and less distortion overall with a three-way design because the mid-range driver takes on some of the work that the woofer and tweeter would otherwise need to do. There are also subwoofers that can be integrated into your speaker setup separately. While specific frequency ranges vary, the low to high frequency range order goes subwoofer, woofer, mid-range, tweeter, all of which are just different types of drivers. The interesting thing about these particular monitors is that the tweeter is sitting right in the middle of the mid-range driver. If you take a look at other three-way monitors, you'll see that the tweeter isn't always positioned in this way. Sometimes it's all by itself. The mid-range and tweeter on the IN5 are coaxial with each other, and as a result of the crossover point with the woofer, the entire monitor acts as a point source, meaning you can place it right side up, upside down, or on its side. So why would you need to adjust the orientation of your monitors? Well, every monitor manufacturer recommends a certain height placement, and Kali Audio recommends that you align the height of the tweeter to within 10 degrees of your ears for best results. Another bonus that comes along with the entire monitor acting as a point source is that it results in a really wide stereo image and clear stereo center. When a broadband audio signal is sent from your audio interface to a speaker, it's split into different frequency ranges using either an active or passive crossover. An active crossover speaker has a power source built into it that amplifies the level of a signal once it has run through the speaker's crossover. A passive crossover speaker requires the use of an external power source to boost the level of a signal before it gets run through the speaker's crossover. Passive speakers offer flexibility by allowing you to mix and match components. You can integrate an amplifier of your choice and gain more control over the sound the monitors produce. Since the amplifier is built into active speakers, they tend to be heavier and more expensive than passive speakers, but the benefit of purchasing an active speaker is that all this component pairing has been done for you by the studio monitor manufacturer. These IN5s are active speakers, so the amps are built in. You just plug them into a power outlet, connect them to the line outputs on your audio interface using balanced TRS cables, and you're good to go. Many studio monitors you come across will be active, but passive studio monitors do exist. Personally, I just want my studio monitors to work right out of the box, which is why I've always opted for active monitors, but you can definitely look into building a passive monitor setup if that's something that sounds like fun. All of the components of a speaker are housed in what is known as a speaker cabinet or enclosure. This is the part of the speaker made of wood, aluminum, plastic, etc. that you can touch and hold. It's the outer shell. Speakers use either ported or sealed cabinets. Ported speakers have a hole cut into the cabinet and a section of tubing to allow sound from the rear side of the speaker's diaphragm, the cone, to enhance the reproduction of low-end frequencies. A poorly designed port can result in chuffing, which is noisy turbulence created by air leaving the port at different speeds. Chuffing can add to the noise floor and distort your perception of low-end frequency content. When a port is placed on the back of a studio monitor, it can reduce the amount of chuffing you hear, but the downside to this design is that if you place a rear ported monitor close to a wall, it can cause the speaker to couple with the wall, resulting in a bass buildup. Many home studio owners don't have the space required to pull their monitors far enough away from a wall to avoid this. So to avoid this issue, some manufacturers place the bass port on the front of the monitor. When a bass port is designed well, which is the case for the IN5s, chuffing isn't noticeable and you're free to place these speakers close to a wall if necessary. Studio monitors are usually classified as either near field or midfield. Near-field monitors are more suited for small studios, whereas mid-field monitors are more suited for large studios. In his article titled Near-Field vs. Mid-Field Monitors, Which is Right for You?, Phil O'Keefe of Harmony Central mentions that near-field monitoring is a good choice for those working in smaller rooms or rooms with more challenging acoustics. While they won't completely eliminate the effect of room acoustics on what you hear, they will help minimize related issues, especially if you keep your playback levels reasonable. Where they often struggle is to provide higher volume levels at greater distances or a wider sweet spot that will support more than one listener at a time. For that, we need to turn to midfield monitors. I've included a link to O'Keefe's full article below. If I say that these IN5s are active, three-way, front-ported, near-field studio monitors, you should know what this means now. There are three primary differences between small studio monitors and large studio monitors. In general, larger monitors are going to provide you with more dynamic range and less distortion, a further listening distance, and deeper bass response. However, you may not necessarily need huge studio monitors if you're working in a small space. As O'Keefe explained, bigger isn't always better. Each driver in a speaker is powered by a certain amount of wattage. More wattage will produce more dynamic range and help avoid distortion. Dynamic speakers produce a sound that is typically described as clear and clean. It's easy to distinguish between different track elements and focus on small details in your mix. If the drivers in your speaker have low wattage, their diaphragm won't push and pull as far as it should. This results in dynamic range compression and distortion. Larger speakers tend to use amps powered by more wattage, but small monitors with high wattage values can produce sound waves with high dynamic range and low-level distortion as well. By looking at the spec sheet provided by manufacturers, you can get a sense of how dynamic and low in distortion certain monitors are. Higher wattage values are an indication of the presence of these desirable qualities. For example, there are 80 watts going just to the woofer in these IN5s, and 40 watts each going to the mid-range and tweeter. For comparison, Yamaha's HS5 has 45 watts going to the woofer and 25 watts going to the tweeter. You don't really see comparable wattage values until you take a look at the much larger and more pricey Yamaha HS8s with 75 watts going to the woofer and 45 watts going to the tweeter. The same thing goes for KRK's Rocket 5s. They only provide 55 watts of power output, and you need to move up KRK's product range for more wattage. Listening distance is generally defined as the distance at which your speakers can produce a continuous 83 to 85 decibel sound wave. Larger speakers tend to have a further listening distance than small speakers, making them more suitable for large rooms. They can be placed further away from the listening position. If you're placing studio monitors on or near your desk, you probably need near-field monitors, but if you're placing them far behind your desk, further away from your ears, you should consider a pair of mid-range monitors. One of the most significant issues you'll run into with small speakers is a lack of bass. Their cones may not be large enough to move the amount of air required to reproduce bass frequencies accurately. Frequency response is specific to the particular monitors you're using, so simply stating that all small monitors don't produce sufficient bass would be somewhat inaccurate. Speakers that produce less bass are less likely to excite room nodes, but the glaring issue they present is that you won't be able to hear sub-frequency content. These IN5s go down to 39 Hz, Yamaha's HS8s go down to 38 Hz, and KRK's Rocket 8 G4s go down to 36 Hz. What's interesting is that these 5-inch Kali monitors are comparable to 8-inch monitors from other brands, but what's even more notable is that none of these monitors are reaching down into that 20 Hz range. For that, you need a subwoofer. Some people think that a subwoofer is optional, but it's actually mandatory in most cases if you want to be able to audition frequency content in that 20 to 40 Hz range accurately. Studio monitors that are capable of producing these low sub-frequencies do exist, but they're extremely expensive. It's often cheaper to just buy a dedicated subwoofer. There are situations in which adding a sub to your home studio setup doesn't make sense. For example, I live in an apartment, and since bass frequencies tend to travel through walls quite easily, it wouldn't be very considerate of me to make use of a subwoofer. However, it would definitely improve my listening situation. Improperly integrating a subwoofer with your main monitors can cause more issues than it cures, which is why I wrote an article called How to Set Up a Studio Subwoofer. A subwoofer shouldn't draw attention to itself. Instead, it should make your main monitors appear to have an augmented bass response. If you properly integrate a subwoofer with your monitors, bass response is hopefully no longer an issue, and you can make your purchasing decisions based on other factors such as dynamic range, distortion level, and listening distance. As a side note, make sure to buy a subwoofer from the same manufacturer that built your studio monitors. The sub's crossover is usually designed with the company's line of speakers in mind. Is it impossible to use a different company's subwoofer? No, but integrating the subwoofer with your main monitors may prove to be more challenging. Kali Audio subwoofer is called the WS12, and that's probably what I'd pair with these IN5s. I'm hoping that it's now more evident that driver size is a somewhat weak characteristic to base purchasing decisions off of. If you're comparing a 5-inch set of monitors to an 8-inch set of monitors, a part of the same product line, the larger speakers will probably produce higher quality results. However, when comparing a set of 5-inch monitors from brand A to an 8-inch set of monitors from brand B, you need to look past driver size and focus on the differences in performance. Brand A could very well be a comparable option to brand B at a significantly reduced price. I replaced my old KRK Rocket 8 G3 monitors with these Kali Audio IN5s, which are actually smaller, but they provide a more balanced frequency response. The difference in mid-range detail as a result of the three-way design was also significant enough that it almost sounded like removing a blanket from my mixes. I should mention that three-way monitors at this price point are really uncommon. You're generally looking at spending at least $1,000 for a pair of three-way monitors, which makes the IN5s really unique, considering they're each just $350. Studio monitor manufacturers are starting to build EQs in their speakers that provide a surprising amount of control. A built-in EQ can help you achieve a near-flat frequency response at your listening position by compensating for the way the sound produced by your speakers interacts with the surfaces in your room. Kali Audio provides a boundary EQ with their Project Lone Pine and Project Independent speakers, and on the back there's a reference chart with optimal settings based on the monitor placement configuration you're using. All you need to do is flip these dip switches to match the image that corresponds to your setup. All studio monitors produce some level of noise when they're turned on and just sitting there. Electronic components produce noise naturally, and since studio monitors produce sound, you're able to hear this noise. Ideally, you want the self-noise level of studio monitors to be as low as possible. The higher the noise floor, the harder it is to hear the quiet details in your mixes. This was another big difference I noticed between my 8-inch Rocket G3 monitors and the IN5s. It was very obvious when the Rockets were turned on because you could clearly hear the noise they were producing, whereas the only way that I know the IN5s are turned on is because of their blue light. Their self-noise level is incredibly low. If you're going to be placing a pair of midfield monitors many feet away from you, which you might be able to do in a larger studio, self-noise won't be as noticeable. Although if you're working in a small space where your near-field monitors are placed just a few feet away from your ears, the self-noise level in the studio monitors you get is something to definitely take into consideration. Acoustic treatment seems to be an afterthought when buying studio monitors, and the degree to which an untreated or poorly treated room hinders your ability to mix your music can be severe. I'm almost tempted to say that if you're not going to bother with acoustic treatment, you shouldn't even bother with studio monitors in the first place. So working in an untreated room can result in mixes that translate far worse to various systems than mixes created solely using headphones. Headphones take your problematic room out of the equation, which is a huge benefit, but you lose your ability to perceive the stereo image of your song in the same way a listener would on a pair of stereo speakers. On headphones, crosstalk doesn't occur, and your perception of a song's stereo image is skewed. To learn how to properly sound treat your studio, check out the Ultimate Acoustic Treatment Guide for Home Studios. This is an article I wrote that you can take a look at using the link below. Quality studio monitors range anywhere from $150 to over $5,000 per speaker. More expensive studio monitors may be more revealing than cheaper monitors, or they may provide more advanced features, but they don't guarantee better results. Your skill as a producer still holds a dominant hand in the quality of the music produced. Higher quality monitors are meant to make mixing your music a less tedious process. Being able to hear the intricacies of a mix clearly will allow you to avoid having to check your mix on 5 different playback systems, and this saves a lot of time. By using a quality set of studio monitors with a subwoofer in a studio that has been acoustically treated, your perception of your mix should translate effectively to other playback systems without much difficulty. I'm really loving these IN5s. They're $350 each, but if you're looking for a cheaper alternative, Kali Audio's two-way LP6 monitors are a great choice at $150 each. I've reviewed these monitors for Sonic Scoop in the past, and in my opinion, they're completely dominating the market around that $150 price point. If you want to learn more about them, I've included a link to my full review of the LP6s down below. Acoustic treatment is like tipping in a restaurant. If you go to a nice restaurant and order a $50 steak, you don't tell the server that you can't afford to tip. What you should do is get a cheaper menu item and tip your server properly. If your budget for studio monitors is $1,000, put aside a couple $100s for acoustic treatment and buy slightly less expensive monitors. The benefits that acoustic treatment provides far outweighs whatever mechanical upgrade a speaker in a somewhat higher price range is going to offer. The negative impact that an untreated room can have on your perception of a mix is tremendous, so acoustic treatment is critical. Hit that thumbs up if this video helped you out, and if you want to learn how to produce better music fast, start now by subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss out on tips, tutorials, and gear roundups. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.